is that we all get it. Don't give in to the pain, just keep living, cause
got dreams I'm striving for. So I'm gonna live higher. I'm gonna live higher. I got dreams, I'm striving.
What's up, guys? I guess this is as good a time as any to share a very personal story with you guys. Only a handful of people in my circle actually know this story that I'm about to share with you guys. You know, with everything going on with the global pandemic at the time you're watching this video, there's this COVID-19 virus that's
the coronavirus pandemic has tanked the global economy with unprecedented speed. Millions out of work.
So I figured, you know, everybody's kind of sharing some personal stories, personal journeys they've gone through, and figured I'd get on here and share mine. I guess trying to figure out where do I start. About 10 years ago, I'm sorry, it's a little, you know, it's a really dark time for me at that time. But about 10 years ago, right around 2010, I was broke. Broke in every sense of the word. Broke financially, mentally, spiritually, physically. I mean, you name it, right? Essentially, it was a very dark time for me. I was very suicidal. I was in a very deep depression. It's right around 2010, and I guess I wanted to share with you how I got out of that, right? How I got out of that dark time, and essentially, you know, what happened was, I didn't have a job. I was, about to get evicted from my apartment at the time, and I remember this day vividly, right? I walked in to my apartment, and there was this red notice where it says, you're about to be evicted, right? You have a court date where you're essentially going to be evicted, and that day I'll never forget it. I got that notice. You know, I stared at it for a while, and I had just come back from an interview, which I didn't get that job. So I got that red notice, and I just started bawling my eyes out. I just started to cry, and long story short, I cried myself to sleep, and I woke up. I told myself that, if I don't make a change, I'm essentially gonna commit suicide, right? And at the time, when someone tells you that they're suicidal, from someone who's not experiencing their level of pain, it's hard to understand what goes through someone's mind when they, to make them think that, right? My thought process was, I'm going through all this pain, right? Emotionally, and my thought process again was like, if I decide to end my life, then that pain goes away. In hindsight, I look back and I say, that pain might have gone away from me, but it would have just been transferred to someone else, right? Because then the law, my brother, my father, all my family members would have carried that pain, because I would have been gone. So they would have had a loss of life for me, and they would have carried some pain because of that, right? But this is what was going through my head, right, at the time. At the time, not to get graphic or anything like that. My thought process was like, what, I'm gonna, this is gonna be over. I'm gonna take my life, and that's it. I don't have to go through pain. I was gonna go to my uncle's grocery store, and he carried a gun at that time, and I was just gonna essentially take my life, right? The pain is over. Not to get graphic, but that's just me fully transparent what I was thinking at that time. But back to, so what happened was that night, I woke up, I cried myself to sleep. I woke up, I don't know, something in me just said, you know what, I need to make a change, or this is, I'm gonna come to the edge of the mountain and jump off, right? Something has to come before, something has to happen so I don't get to that point, right? And whether or not I would have done it, I don't know for sure, but the point is I was mentally unstable. I suffered. I was in very great depression at the time, right? I was suffering, like I said, emotionally but anyway, so I woke up the next day. I said something has to change, right? So I didn't have any money or anything like that, but I went to a local library in my town. It was free, and I honestly don't know what I searched. How to prevent suicide, how to change. I don't know what I typed in that Google search bar, but a guy by the name of Tony Robbins, right, and a guy by the name of Les Brown, right, who literally changed my life, like literally saved my life, right. I would listen to Les Brown, and he would always say, I'm the one, no matter how bad it is or how bad it gets, I'm going to make it, right? And I would repeat that every single day. I would listen to him every single day. Throughout the day, I would listen to him. And then Tony Robbins, which is what really changed it saved me and it changed me internally, right? Tony Robbins, I have this book here. This is not the actual book that I got, which I'm going to talk about later. But, I would watch his YouTube videos, and I was just fascinated by this man, how he changed his life. But there's an old proverb that says, if there is no enemy within, the enemy outside can do us no harm, right? So that's kind of what happened to me. The enemy was within me, right? It was mentally, internally. I had to fix myself internally, because that way anything that's going on the outside world, it wouldn't affect me because I know how to react to it. But anyway, so I started to watch his videos, Les Brown's videos. Les Brown is more so motivational, right? Tony Robbins, for me personally, it was more like psychology, right? It was more like, how to fix yourself internally, right? It was more like psychology, and I resonated with that. But anyway, long story short, I borrowed money to get his book. It's called Awaken the Giant Within. I read that book. Oh man, that book, it literally changed my life, right? And in that book, right, what he talks about, there's a lot of nuggets that I got from that book. But for me, listening to Tony Robbins, the biggest three lessons that can literally change your life is, you make these decisions, these three decisions, right? Number one, what you focus on, right? If you're focusing on all the negative, you're going to keep getting negative, right? Instead of focusing on the solution to a problem. And he talks about there's no way you can be grateful and depressed at the same time, because if you're focusing on being grateful, you're not going to be depressed, because all you're focusing on is what you're grateful for, what you have, your family, your wake up. So what that did for me was, so as soon as I learned that, I just flipped. I turned everything into a negative, right? Into a positive. So what I did was, essentially, every bad situation, I would look at it and just flip, just change the perspective, right? So when I didn't have food, I said, okay, well, I don't have food, but I'm gonna lose some weight out of this, right? I didn't have TV, so okay, I'll read more books. So that's when I really started to get into books. So that's how I changed my perspective on things, right? It's all about perspective. And another thing he talks about is, what meaning will you give your events in life, right? Is this the end, or is this the beginning of something new, right? And the good news about that is you get to decide, you get to make up that meaning, good or bad, right? And you get to, whether it's true or not, you get to decide what that is, right? Is this the end, or is this a beginning to something new, something great, right? You get to decide that. So that's what really helped me kind of get through it. And then lastly, is what are we going to do about it? Are we going to just sit there and just not do anything about it, or just hit it head on and go forward? So what happened was, after, it's funny how life works. So after I read that book, I started to really change my thinking on things and perspective on life. And ironically, 2 weeks after that, I read that book, and I kind of started watching his videos, Les Brown, started reading his books, get immerse myself into his world and understand how it all works, right? 2 weeks later, I got a job, right? And I think like 2 weeks later that I do real estate. So at that time, so I got a job. 2 weeks later, I closed the deal, and I used that money to pay rent, right? Now throughout this time, I had to borrow money to stay in the apartment, but it just slowly started to change for me once what am I going to focus on? What meaning am I going to give it, and what am I going to do? That's literally what changed my life. And I got through that dark time mainly in part because I look back and I think God somehow made me find those two guys, right? It made me search out for more meaning in life, right? And how to get through certain situations. And at the end of the day, it really comes down to, like I said before, that quote: if there is no enemy within, the enemy outside can do us no harm, right? No matter what you're going through, it's really you're your own enemy, because there's gonna be life in life. You're gonna come across all these obstacles, all these hurdles you have to get through. But the best way to do that is if internally you're not your worst enemy, right? Internally, you know how to flip the switch, how to change perspective, how to and that's how I got through it. I to this day, I always recommend Tony Robbins, and I always I still watch his videos and read his books. And one thing that came out of all of that, I'll never forget. I made a promise to myself. I promised myself that that I never want that feeling again, right? That feeling I had of depression, of hopelessness, of just not having any meaning, any purpose. All this pain where the pain was so much that I wanted to just end it, right? End my life. And again, it really doesn't go away. It just gets put onto someone else. So I just wanted to share that story with you guys, and that experience. And if you're going through a tough time, what I recommend is you don't have to read his book or anything like that. But what I recommend is really focus on what you're grateful for, right? No matter what situation you're in, you always have something to be grateful for. If you woke up in the morning, there's other people that didn't get a chance to wake up that morning. They didn't get a chance to eat. They don't have money. They don't have a roof over their head. So you got to focus on what you're grateful for. And if you keep focusing on negative, you're going to find that you're going to keep getting bad things, negative things happen to you. So I just wanted to kind of share with you that personal story. And how I got through it. It was really what I focused on, right? What meaning am I going to give this event? And what am I going to do about it? That's my time. My name's Rosario. Peace.